quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. It's where we all begin. Welcome to Lazy Dog Typewriters.
In the last half of the 19th century, Thomas Edison and Nikolai Tesla battled for supremacy in what was sometimes called the Current War. Edison insisted on DC power as the basis for the U.S. electrical grid. Tesla, a great visionary in his own right, opposed him and pushed for alternating current. Who won the battle? Let's flip the switch and find out.
Automation, transportation, communication.
The man that controls that current controls that future.
Howdy folks, and thanks for joining us here at Lazy Dog Typewriters. We are going to take a stroll down Electric Avenue. In front of you here today is a beautiful blue Signature 812D with a power return. This is a model made by Montgomery Wards, made for Montgomery Wards by Brother in Japan. It comes in a bunch of different rebrands, including Remington, and also Brother put it out under its own name. It's the fourth model that the Brother Corporation developed, so it's called a JP4. And it is, as you might be able to tell, if you see the electrical cord sticking out from the back, an electric typewriter. So you probably won't spin around with the cord attached. So let's take it out and give you a quick overview of the Montgomery Ward Signature 812D typewriter. This machine really reminds me a lot of the IBM Selectric 1, which had a much curvier curvier design than the later Selectric 2 and Selectric 3, and that's probably by design because I think this machine was trying to compete at that level. It really is a well-built, sturdy machine. This is all cast aluminum. There are no plastic parts. Everything is metal on this machine, with the exception, of course, of the keyboard. But it's just a very solid, probably 20 plus pounds, substantial machine with a great touch and just a really nice overall feel to it, like they were trying to compete in what you might call the prosumer market, something like cameras. So it's quality enough to be capable of serving in an office, but also small enough to be used by the home user. And of course, the color scheme really lends itself to home use, or just really vibrant. If you look back at some of the boring browns and grays we got for a lot of these typewriters, especially the electrics, this machine really puts them to shame with its red, white, and blue color scheme. So let's just quickly take a look at this keyboard layout for the 812D. As you can see here in this layout, you have a red repeat spacer key, an automatic repeat spacer, the return key, which is a power return in this case, and then you have the plus and minus key, which is red. You might wonder, well, why is that? Initially, I thought, well, maybe it's because it's a repeating key, but that is not the case. The reason why that key is red is because it is to indicate that it is a change-a-type key, or at least a Brother's version of it. So you could change this type slug right here from a plus and minus to another key. Now, I have never seen one of these keys in the wild that actually is loose, so I'm not sure what other variants you could use on this machine, but they were in theory available, and that was directly analogous to the Smith Corona change-a-type keys. This model is the 812D as opposed to the 811, and so you had D probably stands for deluxe, and so you have your tabs, which are set and cleared, and of course your tab button itself in the center of the keyboard, as you can see here. Taking a look at that. Your on-off switches on the left. The dial on the left here is your touch control, which actually has a pretty substantial impact when you turn it. It's down around 1 or 2 now. It's a nice light electric touch. But if you were to crank this dial, which controls the spring, all the way up to 10 or maybe 11 if it's Spinal Tap, it really makes a difference on how responsive the keys are. So really kind of suits you, I guess, if you're used to more manual typewriter and you want to have a heavier touch. You can certainly crank that up. Over on the right-hand side, we have the copy indicator. So this just controls how heavily or how much energy is given to the type slugs as they hit the platen if you need to make multiple copies using your carbon paper. So we can just leave that down around 1 and not have any problems. All right, continuing our tour of the 812D. Of course, you have the on-off switch here on the left, as you've shown you. Coming around, you've got your standard feature set. You've got your platen knobs on the left. If you push in on the platen knob, you go into freewheeling mode, which is useful for forms. Your line selector mode here, you put it in R. That also means release, freewheeling, 1, 1.5, and 2. Your paper guide for entering the paper into your platen, your carriage. And of course, your margins, push and slide to set your margins. And on the back, Kevin's going to show you. It also has a paper support. Go ahead and fire that off.
Bang.
That's right. One of the best features. And you can see kind of a gigantic tail sticking up like a stingray. Why is that so huge? Well, just like Smith Corona had its page gauge, your piece of paper would slowly go down as you typed, and it would tell you how much space you had left. So whether you like to have a page gauge on the left side of the margin, or Brother's solution, which was a very tall, somewhat fragile paper support that would let you visually see how much paper you had remaining on your paper. Either way, it helped you set your margins and keep your type looking consistent. Rounding out the right-hand side of the carriage, you have your release lever for your rollers, your carriage release button. You only have one on this side, and of course your platen knob. One of the features you also get with this is a pretty nice ruler tray, and it's spring-loaded, and it's just a little step above. I think it's one of those small touches that they were trying to use to distinguish this typewriter from its lesser, cheaper brethren. All right, let's take a look under the hood. You got a nice metal, all metal ribbon cover, and we can see all your standard equipment, if you will. Your one thing that is kind of nice again is these paper guides, card guides, will fold down, and they're interestingly manufactured. I'm not sure if you can see this in the video. I'll try to zoom in. But instead of just being completely flat guides, they're actually molded, so they're kind of curved around the supports which attach them. It's another real small detail. It could have just been straight flat acrylic, as most of them are, but they went to the trouble to mold these around the edge of the supports down there so that it would make an even tighter grip on the paper. And I just think it really shows they were trying to go all out and compete in the business world against the Selectric, which they probably did not do very well, because these machines were only made for about 5 years, from 70 to 75. They may have existed as early as 1964 when the JP3 was introduced, because this is essentially an electrified JP3 variant. But they were going against some pretty solid competition with the IBM Selectric. If you see one of these out there, you might want to snag it up, because there's not seemingly that many made. And just after we tell you that not that many were made, we surprise you with yet another JP4. This one is a Remington branded, Sperry Rand Remington. There are lots and lots of names on this one, but it is a Remington Deluxe 611, and it is a manual carriage arm version of the JP4. So this is, I think, another really pretty color scheme. You've got a black, the same white keyboard. This is the 611, which has the same set and clear tabs. Of course, you don't have the red buttons, and you don't have the power return, although you have the placeholder from where it would go. That is missing. And you don't have the change of type key indicated in red, but you do have the change of type key. So maybe my theory about having them labeled red to indicate that they're present is false, or maybe they just didn't do it on the Remington layout because they wanted it to look more professional and business oriented, which I think this one does, and I think this was aimed very specifically at the business market. It is an interesting anachronism, I guess, because you would have expected most electric typewriters at this time in 1970, when this was made, would have had the power return. So as I was saying, this is an interesting combination of features, because you have the carriage return arm, which was probably considered a bit old-fashioned at the time, combined with an electric machine. It also has some other features we'll show you, including, helpfully, an electrified backspace key, which is really a nifty feature. And a lot of later Brothers, when they're later, I guess JP8, maybe 9, I forget the model numbers for the later typewriters, electric ones, had manual backspace keys and tabs. But here we have electric tab, electric backspace. We have a touch control. You'll notice that on this version made for Remington that the selector levers are not dials anymore, as they are over here on the Brother Signature 812, the Montgomery Ward Signature. Instead, they're using levers, which look awfully familiar if you're familiar with Selectrics. They look a lot like the levers used on the Selectric, so that probably wasn't a huge accident on their part. Under the hood, pop that off, pretty much identical. And as you can see a little bit more easily on this machine, this is driven by this power belt here, this orange power belt. There's two of them for two motors, and I'm not sure if I can show it, but there are teeth on this particular drive belt, and I don't know if that has given it a little more strength or a little more rigidity, but it's just a very well designed machine. You'll see it's fairly quiet when we power these on, and we all have our fingers crossed that these belts no longer break, because I'm not sure where we will be able to find replacements for this. And that is the Achilles heel of these wonderful electric machines, is how do you replace the drive belts if you lose them. For the Smith Coronas, we have engineered a solution. We can work around some of the early Smith Corona electrics, but for these, we might be on the hunt for vacuum cleaner belts or trying to find something with teeth on them, in this case, to repair these machines. So let's fire up these guys and let you take a look at how they work with electricity. Off switch here, and I'm not sure how that sound is coming through, but it's not an absolutely silent whir like the Apollo models, if you've ever had an Apollo. Remarkably quiet electric typewriter. It's noticeable but not obnoxious, and we'll go from here and put the paper in and show you how she works. Zoom in so you can see a little bit. Our typing test. The Z key wanted to stick right there, so we'll have to fix that. Your power return, nowhere near as violent as many of the early Smith Coronas were. As you can see, I'll just tab across and power return again. It's pretty quiet and pretty modest how that works. I didn't point it out, but you have your ribbon color selector here, black, stencil, and red. Position, we'll go ahead and type something in red. Our repeat spacer. Another function that it has a half space button over here, and you can press that and you'll get a little half space. And here's our plus, and see if it repeats. No, it doesn't repeat, but the underline does. The X does also. And try doing that on your manual typewriter. And then you also have your repeat spacer here, which is also fun. And this is a standard Elite typeface. Quick brown fox jumps over the lay dog, and that's what the red color selector looks like. So a nice crisp output. Like we said, we happen to have a Z key stick here. That means that we were going to have to go into the linkages here and put some naphtha and some mineral oil in there, mineral spirits, to break up some old oil that's congealed on us. When we first got these machines, they had a couple different letters. I think the Sperry Rand over here, the Remington 600, had a stuck P as in Papa key, but we freed that up. Let's fire him up and let's see what he looks like when he's working too. All right, we've got a symphony of electric typewriters going. I'm not sure if you can tell, but the motor in this particular example is slightly louder, I think, than the 812D. Let's turn off the 812D. See if you noticed. All right, try to type through the camera. Alright, looks like the Z was a little off on that one too. It could be my poor typing technique, but typing through the camera is not my specialty. Again, you want to advance the carriage, you got to use your hand to do it. Your touch control is here, and your impact resistance or copy numbers are here. Just a great machine. Now, on these machines, kind of my favorite combination is to have a carriage return arm with electric power, and I sure like the powered electric backspace. I don't know, it just seems like a major feature. It probably isn't, but I enjoy it. It's something that is that's a luxury, if you will, to have. And then of course the repeat spacer is fun as well, and of course just regular electric space in its own right is fun. All right, to conclude our overview, Let's talk about the Brother JP4 variant typewriters. First, their pros. First pro, Kevin.
Snappy electric response.
That's right. I know all the vintage rage is about the wonderful manual typewriters, and I do love them. But always keep in mind that the electric typewriters were sometimes 2 or 3 times the cost of your standard manual. And that's simply because they help make you a better typer, a better typist. And for people like me who are pretty bad typists to begin with, it can be really nice to have a snappy electric response when you are typing and helps your touch typing. What's the next benefit, Kevin?
It's made of quality material, and it's all metal construction. So
That's
it's
right.
Pretty strong.
So unlike many of its peers in this era, it is all metal. I think these guys were really definitely competing against IBM, or at least trying to. Turns out they lost, but boy, they put out a superior, a quality product. Not a superior product, but a quality product. What's another benefit of the JP4, Kevin?
Well, it's a repeat spacer, and it has a half space and a powered backspace.
That's
That's
right.
the power.
So it has all the features you might want to have. So they didn't cut anything. A lot of these machines were built to a certain price point. It seemed like they were really going to try to capture market share with this model. And one of the last features is the change type key option. That's a neat idea that never really took off because the IBM Selectric ball element was just such a superior thing, and it was so easy to change your entire typeface. All right, some of the cons. Well, first, Typewriter Minutes will make fun of me for bench pressing the typewriters, but they're quite heavy. Maybe 25 pounds. I'll have to bust a scale out. Their electricity is required, of course. You can't get around that. There's a bit of motor noise and the terror of replacement drive belts. We don't know where to replace these belts yet. This belt is, 49 years old, made in 1970, same as the other one. I don't know if it's the original one installed, but let's hope that it has another 49 years left in it before it breaks so we don't have to face that challenge. All in all, we think if you are interested in electric typewriters at all, that taking a walk down Electric Avenue with these machines, which I think are so beautifully styled, they really stand out, will be a great way to introduce yourself to an electric typewriter that will last you for a good long while, at least until the lights go out. Thanks again. Here is a comparison of the JP4 variants that we mentioned, the Signature 812D, the Remington Deluxe, Remington 611, and then a JP3. This is the Signature 510, also in the 510D and the 510, 11 and 12 and 13, I believe. This is a JP3 variant, and as you can see, it's very similar in its layout, minus electrical power. You've got a lot of high quality features like a paper injector here, the same all metal construction, a nice, very large prosumer typewriter, radio buttons for your ribbon selector, and just an all around really nice machine, really pretty. The only flaw that I know on this machine is the space bar seems kind of similar, kind of flimsy, and I think we can try to figure out ways to deaden that in a future video. We'll take a video look at the Signature 510, the JP3 variant, as well as comparing it to the JP4. The proverbial bug in your electric typewriter. Let's hope it's not a scorpion. Happy Halloween.
Please like, subscribe, and share.